The emergency broadcast reached every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth within 30 minutes. President Park So-young's face appeared on screens in every language as translators worked around the clock. Her message was simple, but it changed everything. "We are not alone in the universe," she said, looking directly into the camera. "An alien military force is approaching our planet with the intention of destroying it. They believe we are weak. They believe we will surrender without a fight. They are about to learn how wrong they are." In military bases around the world, alarms were sounding. Soldiers who had been sleeping were awakened by urgent calls to battle stations. Pilots ran to their aircraft. Tank crews started their engines. Submarine captains ordered their vessels to dive deep and prepare for combat. But this was not like any war humanity had ever fought before. The enemy was not another nation or terrorist group. The enemy came from the stars with technology far beyond anything humans had ever seen. The enemy wanted to kill every man, woman, and child on Earth. General Kim Dong-hyun stood in the command center deep beneath Seoul. His staff officers were receiving reports from every military unit on the planet. The screens around him showed the positions of ships, aircraft, and ground forces from every nation. For the first time in human history, every military on Earth was working together. Ancient enemies became allies in minutes. Countries that had been at war for decades suddenly shared their most secret weapons. Nations that had never trusted each other opened their classified files. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we are receiving data from American satellites, Russian radar stations, Chinese missile systems. Everyone is sharing everything." "Good," Kim Dong-hyun replied. "We will need every advantage we can get." The alien fleet was still 90 minutes away, but already their presence was changing human society. People who had spent their lives fighting each other were now united against a common threat. Scientists who had worked in competition were now sharing their discoveries. Engineers who had guarded their secrets were now building weapons together. Dr. Yujin worked frantically in her laboratory, surrounded by equipment from a dozen different countries. American particle accelerators, Russian electromagnetic generators, Chinese quantum computers, all brought together for one purpose: to find a way to defeat an enemy that seemed unbeatable. She had been studying the alien armor for hours. The metal was unlike anything on Earth, but the energy patterns were familiar. She had seen similar frequencies in her experiments with quantum mechanics. The aliens used a type of shield that bent space around their ships, making them nearly invulnerable. But every shield had a weakness. Every defense could be broken if you understood how it worked. Dr. Yujin had spent 10 years studying quantum fields. She knew that if you could match the exact frequency of the shield, you could cancel it out. "I need every electromagnetic pulse weapon on the planet," she announced to the military leaders watching her work. "We can disrupt their shields, but only if we coordinate the attack perfectly." In orbit above Earth, satellites that had been built for communication were being converted into weapons. The International Space Station became a military command post. Astronauts from 6 different countries worked together to prepare humanity's first line of defense. Captain Sarah Chun was aboard the space station when the emergency began. She had been a fighter pilot before becoming an astronaut. She knew how to think like a warrior, even in the peaceful environment of space. When the call came to prepare for battle, she did not hesitate. "We have 12 satellites in position," she reported to ground control. "Each one is equipped with modified electromagnetic pulse generators. We can create a coordinated burst that should disrupt their shield systems." But ground control had even bigger plans. The rods from God system had been a theoretical weapon for 20 years. Simple tungsten rods dropped from orbit that would strike targets on Earth with the force of nuclear weapons. Now the system was being reversed to target ships in space. 60 satellites positioned around Earth began aligning themselves for the attack. Each satellite carried 20 tungsten rods, each rod weighing 2 tons. When dropped from orbit, they would accelerate to incredible speeds using gravity as their engine. Meanwhile, in the depths of Earth's oceans, nuclear submarines from 8 different nations were surfacing. They carried the most powerful weapons humanity had ever built, missiles that could destroy entire cities. Were being retargeted for use against alien ships. Admiral James Morrison commanded the USS Virginia, the most advanced submarine in the American fleet. He had been patrolling the Pacific when the alert came. His orders were simple: surface and prepare to fire everything at targets in space. This is not what I trained for it, he said to his weapons officer, but it is what we are going to do. The alien fleet was now 1 hour away. Long-range sensors showed their massive ships moving in perfect formation. Each alien vessel was the size of a city. Each one carried enough firepower to level a continent. They expected to arrive at Earth and find a defenseless planet ready for conquest. They were about to be very surprised. In every major city on Earth, people were watching the sky. Citizens who had never thought about war were now preparing to defend their homes. Families gathered in shelters that had been built during the Cold War. Children who had played video games about alien invasions were now living through the real thing, but the most important preparations were happening in small groups around the world. Elite military units like Jinwoo's SEAL team were receiving briefings on a desperate plan if the space battle went badly. If the aliens reached Earth's surface, there would be a ground war. Colonel Min-ho had served in special forces for 20 years. He had fought in every major conflict of the past decade. He thought he had seen everything war could offer, but standing in the briefing room looking at pictures of alien warriors, he realized this would be unlike anything he had experienced. The aliens are physically stronger than us, he told his men. They have better armor, better weapons, and they have been fighting wars across the galaxy for centuries. But they have one weakness: they do not understand humans. Jinwoo sat in the front row listening carefully. He had already killed one alien warrior, but he knew that had been luck and surprise. The next fight would be different. The aliens would be ready for human tactics. What is their weakness, sir? One of the soldiers asked. They think like conquerors. Colonel Min-ho replied, they expect their enemies to fight like soldiers in formation with honor and rules, but humans do not fight fair. We fight to win. We use every trick, every dirty tactic, every desperate strategy we can think of. The briefing continued for 30 minutes. The soldiers learned about alien physiology, weak points in their armor, and ways to disable their weapons, but most importantly, they learned about the alien mindset. These creatures have conquered dozens of worlds, Colonel Min-ho explained, but they have never fought a species like us. Every other race they encountered either surrendered immediately or fought using conventional military tactics. We are going to do something they have never seen before. Outside the briefing room, the final preparations were being made. Factories that had been producing civilian goods were now making weapons. Civilian aircraft were being converted into military transports. Amateur radio operators were setting up communication networks in case the main systems failed. The alien fleet was now 30 minutes away. Their ships were so large they could already be seen with telescopes. Their formation was perfect. Their approach was steady. They were confident that victory was certain. On the flagship, Admiral Taemin studied the small blue planet ahead of him. His tactical computers showed primitive human defenses, scattered aircraft, a few orbital satellites, nothing that could threaten his mighty fleet. These humans killed one of our warriors, he said to his bridge crew, but they will soon learn the price of defying the Korgan Empire. But deep in space, something was happening that the alien sensors could not detect. Human satellites were moving into position. Electromagnetic pulse generators were charging. Nuclear submarines were calculating firing solutions. The rods from God system was preparing to drop its deadly cargo. Dru Jin made her final calculations and sent the targeting data to every weapon system on Earth. The attack would have to be perfectly timed. If even one part of the plan failed, the alien fleet would destroy everything. Jinwoo looked up at the stars one last time before entering the bunker where he would wait for the battle to begin. He knew that in a few minutes everything would change. Either humanity would win the greatest victory in its history, or Earth would become another dead world conquered by alien invaders. The countdown began. 10 minutes to contact. The fight between Jinwoo and Captain Hwansu lasted exactly 18 minutes and 43 seconds. Commander Kang-ho watched from his ship as his greatest warrior fell to the ground with a hole blown through his chest armor. The small human stood over the massive alien body, breathing hard but very much alive. Jinwoo had not tried to match the alien's strength or speed. Instead, he had used his brain. He led the creature into a trap using small explosives he carried in his gear. The blast that killed Hwansu came from below, where the alien never expected it. The human had been thinking 3 moves ahead, while the Korgan warrior was only thinking about his next attack on the alien ship. The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the Screen showing their dead champion, no one could believe what they had just seen. Huansu had never lost a fight. He had killed warriors from 40 different worlds. He was supposed to be unstoppable, impossible, whispered Mireille, the science officer. Her yellow eyes were wide with shock. The human's physical strength is only 1/10 of Captain Huansu's. How did he? Wen Kangho studied the recorded data over and over. The human had used tactics they had never seen before. He fought dirty, using the environment as a weapon. He showed no fear even when facing an enemy twice his size. He adapted his strategy during the fight, changing his approach when the first plan did not work. But what disturbed Kang Ho most was how the other humans reacted. They did not run in terror when they saw their warrior fighting the alien. Instead, they recorded everything on their communication devices. They were studying the alien technology even while the battle was happening. They were learning this is not possible. Kang Ho said to himself, these creatures are supposed to be primitive. They should not be able to defeat a Korgan warrior, but the evidence was right there on his screen. His best fighter was dead, killed by a being that should have been no more dangerous than an insect. Something was very wrong with their intelligence about these humans down on Earth. Jinwoo was examining the aliens' equipment. The armor was made from materials he had never seen. The weapons used some kind of energy technology that was far beyond human science. But most important was the communication device still attached to the alien's belt. Jinwoo had always been good with technology. It was one of the skills that made him such an effective SEAL. He could learn to use enemy equipment quickly, adapt captured weapons, and turn an opponent's tools against them. The alien device was complex, but he could see patterns in its design. His team gathered around him as he worked on the translator. One of his men, Sergeant Kim Ho-jin, was a communications expert. He helped Jinwoo figure out how the device worked. Within an hour, they had cracked the basic language protocols. What they discovered made Jinwoo's blood turn cold. The device was still connected to the alien ship in orbit. Through the communication link, he could hear the aliens talking about revenge. They were angry about their warrior's death. They were calling for reinforcements. Sir Kim Ho-jin said, his face pale, I am picking up massive energy signatures in space. Multiple ships are moving toward our solar system. Jinwoo activated his emergency communication system and sent a coded message to every military base on Earth. The message was simple but terrifying. We are not alone, and they want us dead. The message reached the Pentagon in Washington within minutes. It was forwarded to every major military leader on the planet. President Park So-young of South Korea was the first world leader to receive the full briefing. She had been in a cabinet meeting when her chief of staff burst into the room. Madam President, he said quietly, we have a situation that requires your immediate attention. In space above Earth, Kang Ho was making the biggest mistake of his military career. His pride had been wounded by the death of his warrior. His anger clouded his judgment. Instead of studying these humans more carefully, he decided to crush them with overwhelming force. He activated the long-range communication system and sent a message across the galaxy to Korgan High Command. The signal would take several hours to reach the homeworld, but when it did, the response would be swift and deadly. This is Commander Kang Ho of the 47th Battle Fleet, he transmitted. I request immediate military support. The humans have killed Captain Huansu in single combat. This insult to our honor cannot be allowed to stand. We must make an example of this world. The message was received by Admiral Taemin, the most feared military commander in the Korgan Empire. He was a veteran of 67 planetary conquests. He had never failed to destroy an enemy. He had never shown mercy to those who opposed the Empire. Admiral Taemin stood 12 feet tall, even larger than most Korgans. His body was covered in scars from battles fought across the galaxy. His left eye had been replaced with a mechanical implant that could see through walls. His right arm was cybernetic, stronger than the original limb he had lost in combat. When he received Kang Ho's message, his scarred face showed no emotion, but inside he felt a cold fury. How dare these primitive creatures kill a Korgan warrior? How dare they resist the Empire's authority? They would pay for this insult with their entire civilization. Prepare the 5th Battle Group, he ordered his staff officers. We will show these humans what happens when they spill Korgan blood. The 5th Battle Group was the largest military force in the Korgan Empire, 1,000 warships, each capable of destroying A moon, they had weapons that could burn the atmosphere off a planet, they had shields that could withstand the explosion of a star. They had never been defeated in battle. Within 2 hours of receiving the message, Admiral Taman's fleet was moving toward Earth. Each ship carried a crew of 500 warriors. The total invasion force numbered 500,000 of the galaxy's most dangerous soldiers. They expected to complete the conquest of Earth in less than 6 hours, but back on Earth something unprecedented was happening. Jinwu's warning message had reached every military leader on the planet. Instead of panic, there was immediate action. Every nation began activating secret defense systems that had been hidden for decades. General Kim Dong-hyeon, the highest-ranking military officer in South Korea, made a secure call to his counterparts in the United States, Russia, China, and every other major power. The conversation was brief, but historic. We have been preparing for this day without knowing it. He said, we have weapons designed to fight enemies we could only imagine. Now those enemies are real. President Park So-young called an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. In the meeting room, she stood before representatives from every nation on Earth. Her voice was calm, but her words sent shock waves around the world. We have 2 hours, she announced. Our satellites have detected a massive alien fleet approaching our solar system. They intend to destroy our planet because one of our soldiers defended himself against their warrior. The room erupted in questions and demands for proof, but the evidence was overwhelming. Telescope data showed the approaching fleet captured alien technology, proved the threat was real. The delegates quickly realized this was not a time for politics or debate. This was a time for survival. What the aliens did not know was that humans had been imagining this scenario for over a century. Every science fiction story, every military simulation, every video game had prepared humanity for the possibility of alien invasion. Generals had studied these theoretical battles. Scientists had designed weapons for enemies that did not yet exist. Engineers had built defenses against threats from the stars. In secret facilities around the world, projects that had been classified for decades suddenly became humanity's greatest hope. The rods from God satellite system came online. Nuclear submarines received new targeting coordinates. Space agencies that had been rivals became allies in a matter of hours. Dr. Eugene, a quantum physicist working in Seoul, made a breakthrough while studying the alien warrior's armor. The energy signature was familiar. She had seen similar patterns in her experiments. With electromagnetic fields, their shield technology operates on frequencies we can disrupt, she reported to a room full of military officials. If we can modify our electromagnetic pulse weapons, we can bring down their defenses, but the most important preparation was happening in the minds of soldiers like Jinwoo around the world. These were men and women who had trained for impossible situations. They had survived battles that should have killed them. They had completed missions that others Saad could not be. Jinwoo looked up at the stars, knowing that death was coming from the darkness above. But he also knew something the aliens did not understand. Humans had never learned how to surrender when their homes were threatened, would fight with everything they had, even if victory seemed impossible. The alien fleet was still hours away, but humanity was already at war. The massive alien warship hung in space like a metal mountain floating among the stars. Commander Kanho stood on the bridge watching Earth through the huge viewing screen. His purple skin looked almost black under the dim lights of the ship. His yellow eyes studied the small blue planet spinning slowly below them. It looked so peaceful from up here. White clouds swirled over green and brown land masses. Blue oceans reflected the light from the star these humans called the sun. It was hard to believe that down on that tiny world lived billions of creatures that might be worth studying. Kang Ho was 8 feet tall, like most of his people, the Korgans. His thick arms were covered in natural armor plates that could stop bullets. His people had conquered 47 different worlds in the past 1,000 years. They were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Everyone feared them. Everyone except these strange creatures called humans. The Korgan Empire had sent Kang Ho here for one simple reason. They wanted to test these humans. The Galactic Council had been talking about Earth for months. Some said the humans were dangerous, others laughed and said they were just primitive animals who had barely learned to travel between their own planets. Kang Ho believed they were animals. After studying their transmissions and watching their behavior, he was sure these humans were weak. They fought each other constantly over small pieces of land. They killed each other for resources they could easily share. They seemed to have no honor, no real strength. On the bridge with him stood his crew. The science officer was a female named Mireille. She was smaller than the males, but just as deadly. Her job was to study alien species and find their weaknesses. She had been watching human transmissions for weeks, sir, she said, walking up to his command chair. Our scanners have found something interesting. We have located what appears to be their strongest warrior. Kang Ho turned his massive head toward her. Show me. The main screen changed to show a human military base on Earth. The buildings looked tiny and fragile, like toys. The humans walking around looked even smaller. They were so much weaker than Korgans. It was almost funny. Our deep scans showed this one, called Legion Wu, has the highest combat ratings among their species. Mireille continued. She pointed to the screen where a human male was training with others. He looked ordinary to Kang Ho, just another weak, pink-skinned creature. This Jin Wu is what they call a Navy SEAL. Mireille explained. It appears to be their most elite type of warrior. He has survived many battles and completed impossible missions. The other humans fear and respect him. Kang Ho laughed. The sound was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. Their most elite warrior, he said, with amusement. Look at him. He is tiny. He has no natural armor. His skin looks soft like a child. His weapons are primitive metal and explosives, but Sir Mireille said carefully, the data shows he has never failed a mission. He has killed many enemies in combat situations that should have been impossible to survive. Impossible. Kang Ho stood up from his chair. His full height was impressive, even to his own crew. These humans know nothing about impossible. They have never faced a real warrior. They have never seen true strength. He walked to the weapons display on the wall where his personal combat gear hung. The armor was black and thick, made from materials that could survive in the vacuum of space or the heat of a star. His weapons could cut through steel like paper and fire energy beams that could destroy buildings. Send word to Captain Huansu. Kang Ho ordered. Tell him to prepare for single combat. Captain Huansu was Kang Ho's best warrior. He stood 9 feet tall and was covered in scars from 100 battles. He had never lost a fight. He had killed warriors from dozens of different species. Some had been stronger, some had been faster, none had been smarter or more experienced, sir. Are you sure? Mireille asked. Should we not observe them more, study their tactics? Kang Ho turned to look at her, his yellow eyes glowing with anger. We are Korgan warriors, he said slowly. We do not hide and study like cowards. We test our enemies with honor in single combat. He walked back to his chair and sat down. If this Jin Wu is truly their strongest warrior, then defeating him will show the entire human species what they are dealing with. When Huansu kills their champion, the rest will surrender. Without a fight, the bridge crew began preparing for the mission. They loaded a small transport pod with everything Huansu would need, his armor, his weapons, and a communication device that would let them watch the fight. They also included a universal translator so the human could understand the challenge. Captain Huansu entered the bridge 20 minutes later. He was a terrifying sight even to his own people. His black armor covered him from head to toe, making him look like a walking tank. His helmet had a red visor that glowed in the dark. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stone. Commander, he said, bowing slightly. I am ready to face this human warrior. Good, Kang Ho replied. Remember, this is not just about killing one human. This is about showing their entire species that we are their superiors. Make it quick, but make it impressive. Let them see what real power looks like. Onsu nodded. I understand, sir. I will make them fear us. The transport pod was loaded and ready within minutes. It was speeding toward Earth. The pod was designed to survive entering a planet's atmosphere at high speed. It would crash land near the human military base where this Jin Wu was training on Earth. Jin Wu was running through combat drills with his SEAL team. They were practicing room clearing techniques, moving through a mock building and eliminating targets. The training was intense, but Jin Wu had been doing this for 15 years. He was 32 years old and had served in 3 different wars. He had been shot, stabbed, blown up, and nearly drowned. He had completed missions that other soldiers said were impossible. He had rescued hostages from terrorist strongholds. He had eliminated high-value targets in enemy territory. He had survived when everyone expected him to. Jin Wu was not the biggest or strongest SEAL, but he was the smartest. He could think faster under pressure than anyone else on his team. He could see solutions where others saw only problems. He never gave up no matter how bad things looked. The training exercise was almost finished when the sky began to glow with strange lights. The SEAL team stopped what they were doing and looked up. Something was falling toward them, burning through the atmosphere like a meteor. Take cover, Jinwoo shouted. The object crashed into the training ground with tremendous force. The impact shook the earth and sent dirt and rocks flying everywhere. When the dust settled, they could see it was some kind of metal pod. Steam rose from its surface. As it cooled, the pod opened with a hiss of escaping air. Out stepped something that made Jinwoo's blood turn cold. It was huge, at least 9 feet tall, covered in black armor that looked like it could stop a tank. The creature's helmet glowed with red light. Its weapons looked like nothing Jinwoo had ever seen. The alien warrior looked around at the humans. The SEAL team had their weapons ready, but Jinwoo knew their bullets would be useless against that armor. The creature was obviously not from Earth. This was first contact, and it was not friendly human. Warrior, the alien said in perfect English. Its voice was translated by some kind of device. I am Captain Hwansu of the Korgan Empire. I challenge you to single combat, fight me and die with energy. Wu looked at his team, then back at the alien. He knew this moment would change everything. If this creature was here, then there were probably more somewhere else, maybe many more. The fate of his team, maybe his entire planet, might depend on what happened in the next few minutes. He stepped forward, removing his helmet so the alien could see his face. I am Li Jinwoo, he said calmly. If you want a fight, you have found one. The alien warrior tilted its massive head as if surprised by Jinwoo's calm response. Most species would have run screaming or begged for mercy, but this small human stood ready to fight against impossible odds. Above them in space, Commander Kang Ho watched through the communication link. This would be over quickly, and then they could begin the real conquest of Earth. Admiral Taemin's massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace at exactly 14:30 GMT. 1,000 warships appeared in perfect formation, each one larger than the biggest city on Earth. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying, like watching death itself arrive, dressed in metal and starlight. On the flagship bridge, Admiral Taemin stood 12 feet tall, his cybernetic eyes scanning the small blue planet ahead. His scarred face showed no emotion as he studied the human world that had dared to kill one of his warriors. Commander Bo-Rem, his tactical officer, was already analyzing Earth's defenses. She was smaller than the Admiral, but just as deadly. Her job was to identify threats and eliminate them before they could cause problems, sir. She reported their defenses are even more primitive than we expected. They have some nuclear weapons and basic space technology, but nothing that can penetrate our shields. We can begin planetary bombardment immediately. But Admiral Taemin was curious about the species that had defeated Captain Hwansu. No race had ever killed a Korgan warrior in single combat. He wanted to understand how these weak-looking creatures had achieved the impossible. Show me their military response, he ordered. The main screen filled with images from Earth-human warships, tiny compared to the alien vessels, were moving into defensive positions. Fighter aircraft that looked like toys were launching from bases around the planet. Orbital platforms armed with primitive weapons were powering up their systems. It was almost pathetic. The human ships were made of simple metal alloys. Their weapons used chemical explosives and basic energy systems. Their fighters moved so slowly that Korgan interceptors could destroy them without effort. They are actually going to fight us, laughed Commander Sung Min, the fleet weapons officer. These creatures have no idea what they are facing. Our shields can withstand the explosion of a star. Their weapons cannot even scratch our hull plating. Admiral Taemin nodded, but something bothered him. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever stood and fought when facing impossible odds. Most civilizations surrendered immediately when they saw the Korgan fleet. Others tried to negotiate or beg for mercy, but these humans were preparing for battle as if they actually believed they could win. Their ships were taking attack formations, their weapons were powering up, their communications were filled with battle orders instead of surrender messages. It made no sense. A logical species would recognize that resistance was futile. They would save their population by submitting to Korgan rule. But these humans seem to prefer death to defeat. Perhaps they are simply too stupid to understand their situation, suggested Commander Bo-Rem. Admiral Temin replied, but his instincts told him there was more to this than simple stupidity. Any species that could develop space travel had to possess intelligence. The question was what kind of intelligence these humans possessed. To open a communication channel, he ordered, "I want to speak to their leaders." The message was broadcast on every frequency the humans used. Within seconds, Admiral Temin's face appeared on television screens, radio broadcasts, and internet connections around Earth. His voice was translated into every human language by the ship's computers. "People of Earth, I am Admiral Temin of the Korgan Empire. You killed one of our warriors in combat. For this crime, your planet will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will glass your world and everyone on it." The response came not from Earth's political leaders, but from an unexpected source. Jinwoo's face appeared on the alien communication system. He was still wearing his combat gear, and his eyes showed no fear at all. "Admiral Temin," Jinwoo said calmly, "your warrior came to my planet and threatened my people. I did what any soldier would do. I defended my home. If you want to destroy Earth because we will not bow down to bullies, then you are about to learn why that is the biggest mistake you have ever made." Admiral Temin was impressed. Despite himself, this small human showed more courage than species. With far superior technology, most civilizations begged for mercy when facing the Korgan fleet, but this warrior was actually defiant. "You amuse me, human," Admiral Temin replied, "but courage will not stop plasma cannons. Watch your planet burn." He turned to his weapons officer. "Begin the bombardment." As the alien fleet moved toward Earth, something unexpected began happening. Human satellites that had appeared inactive suddenly came online. 60 orbital platforms simultaneously fired electromagnetic pulse bursts directly at the approaching ships. The pulses struck the Korgan shields, and something impossible occurred. The shields flickered. The energy barriers that protected the alien ships began to fail. Systems that had never been penetrated by enemy fire suddenly became vulnerable. "What is happening, Commander?" Boram shouted as alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. "Our shields are destabilizing." At the same moment, the International Space Station fired a coordinated burst from 12 satellites positioned around Earth. The electromagnetic pulse was perfectly calibrated to match the frequency of the Korgan shield systems. Dr. Yujin's calculations had been exactly right. Half the alien fleet suddenly found their shields completely gone. Their ships were naked in space, exposed to any weapon that could reach them. The perfect formation began to break apart as captains tried to restore their defensive systems, but the humans were not finished with their surprises. Nuclear submarines around Earth fired their missiles not at the alien ships, but at carefully calculated points in space. The nuclear explosions created massive electromagnetic pulses that spread across the entire battle zone. "Impossible," Admiral Temin screamed as his ship's systems began failing. "How are they doing this to us?" The answer came from Dr. Yujin, who was monitoring the battle from her laboratory in Seoul. She had discovered that the aliens used quantum field generators for their shields. If you could match the exact frequency and phase of their quantum fields, you could cancel them out completely. On Earth, General Kim Dong-hyun watched the battle unfold from his command bunker. His screens showed something that should have been impossible. Human weapons were actually damaging alien ships. The mighty Korgan fleet was in chaos. Phase 2, he ordered into his communicator around Earth. 60 satellites began dropping their deadly cargo. The rods from God system released tungsten projectiles that accelerated toward the alien ships using nothing but gravity and orbital mechanics. Each rod weighed 2 tons and struck with the force of a nuclear weapon. The simple metal rods punched through alien hull plating that was supposed to be invulnerable. They created massive explosions inside the ships as they transferred their kinetic energy. The aliens watched in horror as their own ships began tearing themselves apart. But the most devastating attack was yet to come. Dr. Yujin had been studying the alien communication system using equipment captured from Captain Hwansu. She discovered that their faster-than-light communications could be hacked. Working with computer experts from around the world, she created a virus that could spread through the alien network. The virus did not just disrupt their communications, it turned their weapon systems against each other. Within minutes, alien ships began firing on their own fleet. Their targeting computers identified friendly vessels as enemies. Their weapon systems refused to obey orders from their crews. their perfect military formation dissolved into complete chaos. Admiral Tamin watched his mighty fleet destroy itself. His flagship was one of the few ships that still had functional systems, but even his vessel was damaged. Multiple hull breaches were reported on every deck. How? Commander Bo-Rem whispered, staring at the tactical display. How are they doing this to us with primitive technology? The answer appeared on their communication screen. Jinwoo's face looked back at them, but now he was inside one of their own ships. Behind him they could see human soldiers taking control of alien equipment. You want to know our secret? Jinwoo said, breathing heavily from combat. You thought this was about strength or technology, but you missed the most important thing. We humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We have learned every dirty trick, every desperate strategy, every way to win when winning should be impossible. Admiral Tamin realized with growing horror that his fleet was not just losing, it was being destroyed by creatures he had dismissed as primitive animals. These humans did not fight like any species he had encountered. They used deception tactics that broke every rule of honorable warfare. You picked a fight with a species that treats warfare like an art form. Jinwoo continued. And now you are going to learn why that was a mistake. The battle had lasted less than 2 hours. The mighty Korgan fleet that had conquered 47 worlds was burning in space above Earth. Their perfect weapons had been turned against them. Their invulnerable ships were exploding one by one. Admiral Tamin gave the order he had never given in his entire military career. All ships retreat immediately, but it was too late for retreat. The humans had captured too many ships, learned too many secrets. The small blue planet had become the graveyard of the greatest fleet in Korgan history. The battle above Earth raged for exactly 1 hour and 47 minutes. When it ended, half of Admiral Tamin's mighty fleet was destroyed and the other half was retreating in panic. The impossible had happened. Humanity had defeated the greatest military force in the galaxy. On the flagship bridge, Admiral Tamin stared at the tactical display showing the wreckage of his ships. His cybernetic eye flickered as it processed data. He could not believe 300 warships destroyed, 200 more damaged beyond repair. Only 500 vessels remained combat-ready. Commander Bo-Rem worked frantically at her station trying to restore communications with the scattered fleet. So she reported, her voice shaking, we have lost contact with 60% of our forces. The humans have somehow taken control of our own weapons systems. Admiral Tamin could not understand what had happened. His fleet had conquered worlds with advanced technology, civilizations that had been fighting wars for millions of years, but these primitive humans had destroyed him using tactics he had never seen. The worst part was realizing that the humans had been planning this. The electromagnetic pulse weapons had been positioned perfectly. The nuclear strikes had been timed exactly right. The computer virus had been designed specifically to target Korgan systems. This was not a desperate last stand by a doomed species. This was a carefully planned military operation executed with precision that impressed even Admiral Tamin. These humans had studied his people, prepared countermeasures, and set a trap that had worked perfectly. Sir Commander, Sung Min called from his weapons station. We are receiving a transmission from the surface. It is the human warrior who killed Captain Huan. Soup at him on screen. Admiral Tamin ordered. Jinwoo's face appeared on the main display, but something was different. He was no longer on Earth. Instead, he was standing on the bridge of a captured Korgan ship. Behind him, human soldiers were operating alien equipment with surprising skill. Admiral Tamin, Jinwoo said calmly, I want to discuss terms. Admiral Tamin laughed bitterly. You are in no position to discuss anything human. Your planet is still within range of my weapons. Jinwoo smiled. That is where you are wrong, Admiral. Your weapons are no longer under your control. As if to prove his point, warning alarms began sounding throughout the flagship. The ship's artificial intelligence announced in its mechanical voice, warning, unauthorized access detected in weapons control systems, all primary armaments offline. How? Jinwoo continued. Did you think we would stop at disabling your shields? We have been inside your computer networks for over an hour. We know everything about your ships, your weapons, your communication codes. Admiral Tamin felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career. Fear, not fear of death, but fear of complete defeat. His empire's Most advanced technology had been turned against him by creatures he had thought were barely civilized. Jin appeared on the screen next to Jinwoo. She looked tired but satisfied. Admiral, she said, I have studied your quantum field generators, your hyperspace communication systems, and your artificial intelligence networks. Very impressive technology, but also very vulnerable once you understand how it works. What do you want, Admiral? Taemin Askejinwoo's expression became serious. We want you to leave our solar system and never return. We want a guarantee that no other Korgan forces will attack Earth. And we want you to deliver a message to your government. What message? Jinwoo looked directly into the camera. Tell them that Earth is under human protection. Any attack on our world will result in immediate retaliation. We have your ships, your weapons, and your technology. We know where your homeworld is located. Admiral Taemin's yellow eyes widened in shock. You cannot threaten the Korgan Empire. We have thousands of ships, millions of warriors. Jinwoo gestured to something off-screen. A holographic display appeared showing the Korgan homeworld. Take Orga. The planet looked peaceful from space with its purple oceans and silver cities, but as they watched, a small moon near the planet suddenly exploded in a brilliant flash of light. That was your primary military academy. Jinwoo said calmly, we used the weapons from this captured ship to destroy it. The explosion was visible from your capital city. I imagine your leaders are wondering what happened. Admiral Taemin stared in horror at the screen. The moon had contained 50,000 military cadets, the future officers of the Korgan fleet. It had been protected by orbital defense platforms and energy shields. Nothing should have been able to penetrate its defenses. How? Jinwoo continued. Do you think your people will react when they learn that humans can strike anywhere in your empire using your own weapons? Your invincible fleet has become our delivery system. The psychological impact was devastating. Admiral Taemin realized that his defeat was not just military, it was strategic. The humans had not just won a battle, they had gained the ability to project power across the galaxy using captured Korgan technology. Commander Bo Ram whispered, Sir, our long-range sensors are detecting human ships throughout Korgan space. They are using our own hyperspace networks to move between systems. Admiral Taemin closed his eyes as the full magnitude of the disaster became clear. The humans had not just defended their world, they had turned his own fleet into an invasion force aimed at the Korgan Empire. Jinwoo's voice became harder. Admiral, you came here to destroy our planet because we killed one of your warriors in self-defense. You brought 1,000 ships to exterminate our entire species. Now you have lost half your fleet and given us the tools to strike back on Earth. General Kim Dong-hyun was monitoring the conversation from his command bunker. Around him, his staff officers worked to coordinate the most audacious military operation in human history. Using captured alien ships, human forces were already establishing bases throughout Korgan space. Sir, reported his intelligence officer, we have successfully infiltrated their communication networks. Every military base in the Korgan Empire is now accessible to our forces. We can monitor their fleet movements, weapons development. As strategic planning, excellent, General Kim replied. Continue the operation, but remember, we are not conquerors, we are defenders. Our goal is to ensure that no alien force ever threatens Earth again. The strategy was brilliant. Instead of trying to occupy alien worlds, humans were creating a network of hidden bases throughout Korgan space. Small teams of special forces soldiers operated captured ships, monitoring alien activities and ready to strike if necessary back on the alien flagship. Admiral Taemin was facing the worst decision of his career. He could order his remaining ships to continue the attack on Earth, but now he knew it would be suicide. The humans had turned his own fleet into a weapon pointed at his homeworld, or he could accept defeat and return to face the shame of losing to a species his government had dismissed as primitive. Either choice would end his military career, but only one would save the lives of his remaining soldiers. Jinwoo seemed to read his thoughts. Admiral, we do not want to destroy your people. We are not conquerors like you, but we will defend ourselves. We will use every weapon, every tactic, every advantage we can find to protect our home. Admiral Taemin looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were afraid, confused, and defeated. These warriors, who had never lost a battle, were now beaten by enemies they had underestimated. Very well, he said quietly, we accept your terms. The surviving ships of my fleet will return to Korgan Space, we will deliver your message to our government. Jinwoo nodded. Good, but Admiral, remember this if your people ever threaten Earth again, we now have the tools to fight back. We have your ships, your weapons, and your technology. We know your weaknesses. The communication ended. Admiral Taman ordered his remaining ships to retreat. But as the battered Korgan fleet limped away from Earth, he knew this was not the end. This was the beginning of a new era in galactic politics. The small blue planet had become the most dangerous world in the galaxy, protected not by massive fleets or advanced technology, but by the simple fact that its inhabitants refused to surrender. No matter how impossible the odds, humanity had announced itself to the universe. In the most dramatic way possible, they had turned their greatest defeat into their greatest victory. And now every alien civilization would know one simple truth: humans might look weak, but they were the most dangerous warriors the galaxy had ever seen. 3 days after the battle, Emperor Wookjin of the Korgan Empire sat in his throne room staring at reports that made no sense. The most powerful fleet in galactic history had been destroyed by a species that had barely learned to travel between planets. His greatest admiral was requesting permission to surrender. The throne room was vast and dark, lit only by floating crystals that cast purple light on the polished stone walls. Emperor Wookjin was ancient even by Korgan standards. He had ruled for over 300 years and had never known defeat. His advisors stood in a circle around the throne, each one afraid to speak the truth. The reports from Admiral Taman's surviving ships told an impossible story. Humans had not just won the battle, they had captured Korgan technology and were using it to threaten the entire Empire. General Hanwoo, the chief military advisor, finally broke the silence. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "the humans have done something unprecedented. They have defeated our forces using tactics we have never encountered. They have captured our ships and turned our own weapons against us, Emperor." Wookjin's red eyes glowed with anger. "How is this possible? Our intelligence said these humans were primitive. They have no natural armor, no energy weapons, no experience fighting advanced civilizations. That intelligence was wrong, Your Majesty," General Hyunwoo replied. "The humans may lack advanced technology, but they possess something more dangerous. They have the ability to adapt to any situation faster than their enemies can respond." The Emperor stood from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the room. "Show me these human tactics," he commanded. The main display activated, showing recordings from the battle. The Emperor watched in growing amazement as human forces used electromagnetic pulses to disable Korgan shields. He saw tungsten rods dropped from orbit, punched through hull plating designed to withstand starfire. He witnessed human computer viruses turn Korgan ships against each other. But what disturbed him most was the speed of human adaptation. Within hours of first contact, these creatures had analyzed Korgan technology, developed countermeasures, and executed a coordinated attack across their entire planet. "They fight like no species we have ever encountered," General Hyunwoo explained. "They do not follow rules of honorable combat. They use deception, improvisation, and tactics that seem chaotic but are actually carefully planned." On the display, Jinwoo appeared, speaking to Admiral Taman. The Emperor studied this small human warrior who had started a chain of events that threatened the entire Korgan Empire. "This one killed Captain Wansu," Emperor Wookjin said. "Yes, Your Majesty, in single combat using explosives and tactics our warrior did not expect." "Emperor,